Hi there, fun seekers. Here I am over here. Welcome in. Yes, it is a Thursday, May the 18th, 1989. That's what it is. Magnificent Lassiter with you until 6, as I am every weekday right here. News Radio 970 WFLA. I haven't said that for a long time. Not for a long time. I used to open all the shows that way. Yesterday, I was sitting in Frank's living room somewhere over there in Clearwater. Michael would never be able to find it, not if he followed his own directions, but that's neither here nor there. And while I was there doing the show, there were a couple of newspaper-type people there. One, a woman reporter from the Oldsmar Shopping Guide. They were doing a little piece on me that apparently will run in July. And she wanted to know, mind you, I had just barely gotten there. And she wanted to know just what the 4th of July meant to me. And, you know, keeping kind of out of left field. I don't normally walk around in May, especially thinking about the 4th of July. I was frankly at a total loss to answer the question and felt a little bit embarrassed about it, so I said things like, well, it's a very special day, which she dutifully wrote down. And then I thought even worse than that, and I took it a step further, and I said, well, you know, come on, the 4th of July, it's kind of a schmaltzy holiday. It's, you know, it's the Star-Spangled Banner and fireworks and hot dogs and ketchup, and it's supposed to be like that. It's a very special day. It is schmaltzy. It should be. There's no doubt about it. I will get goosebumps when I hear the Star-Spangled Banner being played in America the Beautiful in Stars and Stripes Forever, and I look up in the sky and I see the fireworks going off, and I look around me and I see all the families and the flags and the balloons. Yeah, sure, I'll get goosebumps. I wish I could have thought of some other things to say to her. I didn't. But I thought about it last night, and I thought about it this morning. When I'm standing there, you see, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. A lot of you will not understand some of the things I'm going to say because your families have been in this country for many, many generations. My family hasn't. I'm primarily a second-generation American. I get very, very emotional when I see things like the Statue of Liberty. Or I go to a 4th of July celebration. See, I think back to Czesław and to Genefefa Głodowski. Czesław came here somewhere around the turn of the century. I'm not clear on the date, unfortunately. But he came here as a tourist. His family sent him over. He was in his late teens. Genefefa was an immigrant. I still have the pictures of the rather lanky young Genefefa and the rather dashing young Czesław. I think back to how they came here, two young people, one an immigrant, the other a tourist who just stayed and never went home. An illegal immigrant, if you will. To the stories of the candy store in South Philadelphia that they opened up and lost during the Depression. To how Genefefa then became a cigar roller or maker, whatever you call it, in the cigar factories in Philadelphia. How Czesław became a paper hanger and a carpenter. I do not know for sure why these people came to this country. They never really talked about it. At least not to me. But I sure as hell know what they accomplished, and I sure as hell know what the tens of millions of others who came at roughly the same time accomplished. Now, Czesław and Genefefa were not exactly perfect people by any stretch of the imagination, but they were damn good people. Their shortcomings included that they were prejudiced and really disliked black people because they were afraid of them. They were terrified of them, except for Willie. Now, you see, Willie worked in the produce department at the A&P on Liberty in Camden. They knew Willie. Willie didn't scare them, so they liked Willie. They even invited Willie over to the house. But to the best of my knowledge, as closely as I can remember, he was the only black person they ever spoke to, the only black person they ever liked. But they were good people. They were honest people, hard-working people, sincere people. And so were their children. One of their children was my father. Now, my mother's family came from Ireland. I never met the original Welshes. But I knew their children. My grandfather was one of them. They had three boys. One owned a bar in Camden, New Jersey. He dabbled in local politics. He was fairly successful, and he spent much of his money buying municipal bonds issued by the city of Camden during the height of the Depression. Most of the paper was worthless. Another one of the boys became a Catholic priest, and he spent much of his life in a small seaside town in northern New Jersey called Manasquan, where his greatest accomplishment was building a grammar school in his parish. He was so very, very proud of that school. He used to love to go over and talk to the children and have them surround him and play ball with them and soccer with them. And the other son, my mother's father, worked at the post office for 44 years. He was one of those people that you would kind of look down on today. You know, you'd call him a civil servant. I have no idea where I'm going to spend the 4th of July this year. It's a little bit too early to tell. Possibly in a park somewhere, or where there's a band shell and some fireworks, or maybe in somebody's backyard, maybe even in my own backyard. Whatever. But I will surely see the fireworks, and I will hear the songs, and well, the truth of the matter is I'm very concerned. You see, Cheswoff and Genefefa, well, let me tell you a little bit more about them. Cheswoff became Charlie. Genefefa became Jean, because they wanted to be Americans. They didn't want to be Cheswoff and Genefefa. They wanted to be Americans. Now, being an American was not very easy for these people. They didn't read very well. They didn't have a great command of the language. It was much more comfortable for them to be Cheswoff and Genefefa. But they wanted to be Americans. They didn't want anybody to know that they were somehow not from here. They were so proud to be here. They owned a Buick. Always. Sometimes the Buick would get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, but sometimes it would only be a year or two old. They always owned a Buick, because they couldn't afford a Cadillac, and the Buick was the next best thing they had. And it was only a few $100 difference, but they also owned their own home, free and clear. They owed absolutely no one. They put Henry, my father, and Irene, my aunt, through private schools. Okay, they were Catholic schools, but they still cost money, and a lot of it for working-class people. Charlie had 5 suits. Dark gray one, a light gray one, a dark blue one, a black suit, and a brown suit. He hardly ever left the house except to go to work. And he wore painter's overalls when he went to work. But Charlie would wear a suit every Sunday and every holiday. That's the kind of man he was. Jean, well, she's at her table with silver and lace on Sundays. Not the rest of the week, just on Sundays. They were a blue-collar family like millions of others, but they lived a different America than the America that you and I live in. One where it was honorable to earn your living with your hands, and where wages were good enough that people could own their own home, and people could dress up the dinner table on Sunday with a silver or 2 or 3. Because people earned living wages back then. Now, Mike Welch, my grandfather on my mother's side, he worked at the post office. He rose to the rank of assistant superintendent of a very small suburban New Jersey post office, where he retired after 44 years of service. He was very proud of that. He was proud of his 44 years. He was proud of his position of assistant superintendent, and at a 15-man post office, I don't think it was probably a hell of an important position. But boy, he was proud of that. Along the way, he lost his wife when he was in his mid-20s. He supported his mother, raised 3 daughters and a son. He went in early every morning and stayed late every night. He, too, owned his own home. He owed no one. And he paid for 3 full-scale weddings in 4 years. No one ever suggested that he was overpaid. No one ever suggested that he was a do-nothing government freeloader. Now, Charlie and Jean read every shred of news that they could get their hands on, even though they could hardly read. It would take them hours to go through a newspaper. They actually worked at being Americans. Mike He wore one of those little flag lapel pins on his suit every day of his life, and he was very proud of it. They were all registered Democrats, and at one time or another, they all belonged to labor unions. Now, Gene was a very well-known soft touch in the neighborhood for people who were down and out. There used to be things called bums back then. Not quite as derogatory a word as it is now. But men and sometimes even women who were homeless. They all knew about Jean, my grandmother. I cannot begin to count the number of humongous ham and cheese sandwiches and giant tall glasses of milk that I saw this woman pass out the front door to hungry men and women. Scores, hundreds that I saw. Both families gave to the church until it hurt. Now, Charlie and Jean didn't go to church, but they thought it was right that they should give. And they did. Mike was somewhat of a religious fanatic. Literally. They all paid their property taxes in cash, and they paid them on time. And never once did I hear them complain about an assessment that they thought was too high, or a marginal tax rate that they thought was too high. They were actually and literally pleased that they had done well enough to owe taxes. When a phone bill came in the morning mail, someone would get on the bus and go downtown and pay it that afternoon in cash. Charlie and Jean didn't have a bank account. They did have one back in the 1920s. They lost it all. The basement was divided up into several rooms, and one room was where the oil tanks were, and Charlie had very, very carefully removed a cinder block, hollowed out the center of it, and that's where they kept their money. And everybody in the family, including myself at the age of about 7 or 8 years old, knew that the money was there. They told me in case something happened to everybody else, and I was the only one who survived. That's where they kept their money. When the bills would come in, they would go down and remove the cinder block and take out whatever they needed and pay them. And they were so pleased and proud to be able to pay them. They were common working people in love with this country. And the opportunity that it afforded them and everyone else who lived here.
It's out there again, waiting. Allergy season.
And of course, especially women. You see, these ill-educated immigrants that comprise my family, they would have realized that most people who earn $5 or less an hour are women. And that nearly half of those working women are single parents. You see, Charlie and Mike and Jean, they would have been able to figure that out. And they would have wondered about the children. They would have been angry to think that managers and investors would pad their own pocketbooks on the labors of decent working people and at the expense of the children of the decent working people. They would have been really mad about that. You see, Charlie and Mike and Jean, they came here because they wanted opportunity. They came because they knew that opportunity existed in America. They found opportunity and they found hardship. But they found opportunity for a man who could hang wallpaper. And for a cigar maker and for a mail clerk. The opportunity to prosper, to own a piece of the rock. But that is no longer the case. When a paper hanger cries out that he can't make it, some smart-ass Republican says, well, why don't you get another job? Why don't you, I don't know, trade junk bonds or something? We see Charlie came here because the paper hanger could make it, damn it. And that's why Mike's family came too, because a clerk could make it. They could have dignity and pride. They could own their own homes, they could own their own automobiles, and they could owe no one. Because you didn't have to be a junk bond trader back then. You just had to be a decent working man or a decent working woman. America does not need another junk bond trader. It needs more paper hangers who do flawless work, who own their own homes, free and clear, and who read the newspaper and know what in the hell's going on. America does not need more stockbrokers. It needs more factory workers who can live in dignity and then go to and from work with their heads held up high, and whose products are snapped up by their fellow Americans and in demand worldwide. That's what America needs. America does not need more lotteries for its people to dream about. It needs a living wage that will give all of its people the real chance to own a home, the real chance to have a nest egg, and maybe a few pieces of silver plate to dress up the table for Sunday chicken dinners. That's what America needs. But none of that is going to happen unless and until the overwhelming majority of Americans earn a living wage. Charlie drove a Buick. He drove a Buick because there were a lot of people who could afford to employ him as a paper hanger. Gene rolled cigars because there were guys who were employed at the Buick factory who liked to sit back after the end of a hard day's labor with a good American cigar. And Mike got up and went into work early each day because people respected his efforts. Charlie and Gene and Mike, they supported a minimum wage, as well as all of the programs and policies that were designed to lift up working people in this country. They weren't socialists. Hell, in fact, Charlie and Gene were refugees from communism. Nor were they capitalists in the purest sense of the word, because they were only interested in having what they needed, what they themselves earned, not the fruits of someone else's labors. They were Americans, in the best sense of the word, American. They wanted a strong America. They wanted a free America. A land of opportunity. A land where a man got an honest day's pay for an honest day's labor. A land where a working man could own his own piece of the earth. A land of equality. A land of dignity and respect. Not just for themselves, but for all of the people. I'm sorry to tell you that Charlie and Gene and Mike and all the rest of them, they did not achieve that goal. But they came close. So very, very close. Close enough to celebrate. Close enough to be proud. Close enough for me to be proud of them. I owe everything I have to Charlie and Gene and to Mike, and to all of the other Charlies and Genes and Mike, and so do you. For the most part, I have achieved the American dream. I have a good job, comfortable home, a couple of bucks in the bank. And I'm sorry to say that I did so with damn little effort on my part. And I suspect that most of you would say the same thing if you were really honest with yourselves. But regardless of what the lying neoconservatives would have you believe, there are fewer and fewer of us who will ever see the American dream of owning a home, of having a decent, well-paying, productive job, of having a nest egg. Those SOBs can lie about it all they want, but it simply is not the truth. That America's never had it better. We have no respect whatsoever for working people in this country. We look down our noses at them. We look down our noses at their products. We dislike and mistrust each other. That's why we arm ourselves against each other. We do shoddy work. We are less and less productive. We would rather drag someone else down in the mud to our own level than work to achieve their level. And worse, I'm not here to speak for themselves, but I feel reasonably sure that Charlie and Gene and Mike would have tears in their eyes were they alive to see what we have done to this country. I doubt very much that either Charlie or Gene or Mike would have achieved their dreams if they were to come to America today. You see, Charlie worked too slow. He would have said that a good job was better than a fast one. And besides, he didn't read very well, and you more or less had to tell Charlie what you wanted him to do. He didn't really know how to work from a schematic or a blueprint, but you only had to tell him once. Jean would have lost her job to a machine probably built in Taiwan. Mike would have been crushed to think that people would look at him as overpriced slime for working for a government agency. Charlie would have been puzzled to think that his fellow workers would find it almost un-American because he believed in collective bargaining. Towards the end of Charlie's life, he took a job at a firm that my father worked at called Lonergan's. Shortly after he went to work there, the union went on strike for several weeks. Charlie needed the job. So did my father. But they understood the common good. As it turned out, Mr. Lonergan cut a deal with the workers. Now, you see, Mr. Lonergan lived in a large, fine house in the Philadelphia suburbs, and he had a big, shiny car, and he wore very expensive, nice clothes. So we can assume that he did fairly well. Most of Mr. Lonergan's employees owned their own homes and drove their own cars. They did fairly well. Somehow, the firm managed to pay decent wages and give Mr. Lonergan a damned healthy return on his investment. Charlie thought that's the way it should have been. Not too many people do anymore. Gene would not have understood why it is that an average house costs almost 4 times the average yearly wage now instead of just 1 time. Gene would have felt very sorry for all of the women, all of the mothers who will raise families and homes that belong to someone else. Mike would have never understood why there was no dignity in working for the government anymore. The government of the United States of America. He wouldn't have understood that. And none of them would have understood why the president who wants to be known as the education president, proposed an increase in the education budget of $100 million less than the nation's best junk bond trader earned last year. None of them would have understood that. How I wish I could have thought of all this to say yesterday to the reporter when she asked the question about what the 4th of July means to me. The 4th of July shouldn't mean any more or any less than all of the other days of the year. Again, I'm sure that it didn't for Charlie and Mike and Gene. 4th of July is nothing more than a day of reflection. I hope it always will be. But Charlie and Gene and Mike, you see, they lived the 4th of July 365 days a year. I wonder how it is that we ever got to the point that we no longer do. When we talk about American men and women in the abstract, when we talk about them as commodities, as chattel, as numbers, then we are no longer a nation. We need not celebrate the 4th of July anymore. When we grab for the brass ring with little or no concern that others cannot reach it, then we have no need for the 4th of July, because we're not a nation any longer. When we cheat each other, when we deceive each other, when we claw and backbite and climb over each other to succeed, when we steal from each other, we are no longer a nation. At least not the nation we say that we want to be. The nation that Charlie and Gene and Mike helped to make. Yeah, I suppose I'll celebrate the 4th of July again this year. Celebrating what we were. And what I still hope that we can become once more. But, you know, there's really not that much to celebrate in what we have become. And that hurts so very, very much to say. It's true that millions of Cheswoffs and Genefefas and Michaels are still coming to this land in hope of that American dream, the American dream that brought my grandparents here. And most of them will find it. Usually to the jeers of those of us who were already here before them. Most of us miss the fact that these people who are still coming are just like Charlie and Gene and Michael. They work very hard. They look out for each other. They hold their heads up high. They ask only for what they earn. We, on the other hand, usually try to exploit them and to put barriers in their way. And yet everything is relative, and I suppose that it's still better here than where they came from. It's just too damn bad it's not as good as it used to be here. Not just for them, but for the rest of us as well. I suspect that Charlie and Gene and Mike damned near burst their buttons when they celebrated the 4th of July. When the band played Stars and Stripes Forever on those 4th of Julys 40 and 50 years ago. Sentimental slob that I am, I will probably have tears in my eyes this year because my buttons won't be bursting. And they never will so long as men in $1,500 suits try to convince me that a 30-cent an hour wage increase is out of the question for a decent working man. And then in the next breath, tell me that the $500 billion invisible airplane is going to cost 20 or 30% more. And then gets into a helicopter and flies off to his $3.5 million beachfront home in Kennebunkport.
Swiftmud is stepping up water use restrictions. It says the Bay Area is coping with a severe water shortage. We'll have details.
My God, we could certainly use a lot more Charlies and Jeans and Mikes these days. My wallpaper is crooked. There are a lot of people who could use a damn good sandwich. And the guys at the post office are taking it on the chin along with a lot of other guys in this country. Those damned Republican bankers have us sitting on a house of cards that's liable to collapse at any time now. And the capitalists have turned the guys at the shop against one another. I'll never know how the hell they did that. This world is absolutely insane. There's some guy named Trump who a lot of the young people really idolize. He just sold some properties to another guy named Merv Griffin. And the ink wasn't even dry on the paper yet when Trump was chortling about how he had really suckered Griffin into a lousy deal, and people applauded him and ran out and bought his book, The Art of the Deal. Oh, damn, Charlie, where are you? Gene, Mike? Those SOBs raised the taxes on the hamburger flippers. Can you believe that? They raised the taxes on the hamburger flippers, and they lowered the taxes on the guys who moved all those factories to Singapore. There's some joker who wants to put a simpleton's face on Mount Rushmore. Can you believe that? And people who circumvent that Constitution that you people had to commit to memory before they'd allow you to be citizens, well, they call him a hero. And there's some woman reporter from the Oldsmar Shopping Guide who wants to know what the 4th of July means to me. Do you know, Charlie, I walk around with over $15,000 in my wallet? No, not in cash, in little pieces of plastic. Anytime I want. Can you believe that, Charlie? Costs 5 times what your house cost. I walk around in pieces of plastic in my wallet. It's the kind of crazy world I live in, Charlie. By the way, I will earn more this year, Charlie, than you did in your entire lifetime. And if I'm lucky, keep this in mind, Charlie, before you get too excited now. If I'm lucky, I might be able to get a double-digit mortgage that will allow me to buy the average new house. But, Charlie, statistically, I will not live long enough to pay it off. I wrote this monologue on a computer that was designed by 2 fine American boys. 2 of the finest American boys raised in this country in quite some time. Geniuses. They're billionaires now, Charlie. But the computer, Charlie, was built in Taiwan. Because the labor is cheaper there. Charlie, do you know that those 2 boys built their first computer in a garage in California? Charlie, do you know that most American boys will never live in a house with a garage? I don't know. So the 4th of July speech is a little bit early this year. And I will celebrate the 4th of July, I promise you. I'm just not so sure what in the hell it is that I'm celebrating anymore. I assume that most of you will be there, along with me. But could you tell me what it is that you're going to be celebrating? Do you think you could help me out possibly by telling me? Because I just don't know anymore. I know there was so much to celebrate in the past, and I'm still enough of an optimist to keep my fingers crossed hoping that there will be something to celebrate in the future, but I'm just not so sure about the present. Not when you think about all those things I just said. Not when you open up the paper in the morning and look at it. Not when you sit back and reflect on what it is that's going on. I don't know what in the hell it is we'll be celebrating this year. Could you tell me? 990-9352 in Hillsborough. That's 990-WFLA. In Pinellas, 461-9352. 461-WFLA. Practical choke line, what the hell? 1223-9797. Possible to recap. I won't even try. Just if you want to comment. If you don't, win some, lose some. You know what I mean? 990-9352 in Hillsborough. The only place you will find lines available, and you will find 3 of them. 990-WFLA. Pinellas Park. Hi, Pinellas. You're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Good afternoon, Bob.
Hi.
Good monologue.
Thank you.
Listen, I'm young. I'm under 30 years old, and I bust my butt at my job. Okay, I'm a painter.
Mm-hmm.
I paint houses, and I like to try to paint high-rise condominiums, and I'm damn good at it. Real good. I'm one of the best in the business, and I can...
How you're talking about the working people and how they're getting screwed and so forth. And I've heard you on occasions, and I can think of 2 occasions offhand vividly where you chastised people for... One guy called up and you were discussing a subject, and he said, Bob, I said to him, yeah, it's probably some lawn business or something, and you hung up on the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's a business, and the guy's making a living.
Mm-hmm.
And another one, just recently, a gentleman called up, and he claimed to be a stockbroker, and you were talking about the economy. And the guy didn't know what he was talking about. And when you hung up on him, you said, yeah, you use your tool. You're probably a carpenter or something. So why do you talk about the working people like you care about them when all you do is make fun of them when they don't agree with you or something, and you make them feel like jerks?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you do that, Bob?
I don't know. Did you have something you wanted to comment on what I said?
Well, I agree with you that most people will look down on the working people nowadays, but that's our society. And you were talking about houses and so forth. Sure, not everybody can afford to go out and buy a $100,000 home, but there's plenty of homes around here now in the $50,000 range, which are far within everybody's grasp.
No, I'm sorry, a $50,000 house is not in your grasp, but you earn the average $17,000 wage.
Why wouldn't it be? If you put the...
Why wouldn't it be?
A $45,000...
It's not in your grasp because there's not a bank that'll give you a loan on a house that's worth 3 times what you earn in a year. That's why it wouldn't be.
But a $45,000 mortgage would bring your payments to around $465, $470 a month, and you have people paying more in rent that are still only earning $17,000 a year.
That's right. But a bank doesn't finance your rent. They don't give a good hoot what your rent is.
Well, I agree with you there, Bob. But I'm just I get a little aggravated when you talk. Excuse me?
I demean the nicety.
You did, sir. Mm-hmm. And you can't deny it because it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wish
I just find it's incredible that you sat there and you listened to a 1-hour monologue, you moron, you miserable moron. You sat there and listened to a 1-hour monologue about something that is really a major problem in this country, and the best you can do is to get somebody to dial the phone for you so that you can pull out of context 2 ridiculous statements that I may or may not have made. Get off my phone, you jerk! Unbelievable. Tappy, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yeah, Bob, I was just thinking about what, I celebrate and what you could celebrate on the 4th of July, too, you fat communist pig. Why don't you sit there and listen to what you're saying for once? All right?
Oh, well, what am I saying?
You're sitting there telling everyone how bad they do and how good it could be if they do something else. Well, maybe if they want to do what they're doing, and it's their pride and what they take it in. Okay?
Well, what does that mean?
It means that they're doing the best damn job they can do at what they're doing.
Oh, is that what that means?
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
That means you're a fat communist pig for not paying...
I'm a fat communist pig! Just take that right the hell out. His burp, I just didn't feel like listening to it. I do declare that there are times when I get such a tremendous pleasure out of knowing that there are little boys like you out there who are going to spend the rest of your lives living in a country where the cost of living is going to go up, where the standard of living is going to go down, where you're never going to own your own damn house, where you're never going to have a decent job because somebody else has already mortgaged your future. Unbelievable. One line available. Hey, maybe you've got something to contribute. The line is in where? Pinellas County, 461-9352. Well, if it isn't that song, we'll be hearing that several times again this hour.
If you're lucky.
What do you mean if I'm lucky?
Well, I guess I don't need to save your show quite as bad as yesterday. Hi, Bob. Dear Mr. Maseko, Bob has failed to introduce me at 4:20. Well, we'll tell you the traffic conditions on Florida Avenue south of Bush. Still slowed a little bit. Far right lane if you move.
Last 15, 20 minutes, I go through a rather lengthy monologue, something that I gave a great deal of thought about. And, I come to a show, and I have to deal with a lot of young little guys who have no idea what the hell the real world is about. And I foolishly allow myself to get angry with them. I foolishly allow myself to sit there and to try to swap insults with them. This is something that's very real, the things that I spoke about. And it's really very tragic that there are so many people in this country, many of whom appear to be young, many of them whom appear to be male, many of whom think it's, really cool to be I'm a Republican. Many of them who have no idea under the sun that much of the representation that they have in Washington and Tallahassee is actually working against them. And if you think that Connie Mack is your friend, and if you're not a millionaire bank owner, you're just a fool. If you think that most of the other people in the congressional delegation in this state are your friends, you're just a fool. If you think that most of the people in Tallahassee are your friends, you're just a fool. And I apologize, not to you, to hell with you, I apologize to myself for getting angry with the likes of the people who seem to show up in the early part of the program. Board, of course, the board's jam-packed full now. Where the hell were you 15 minutes ago, huh? Tampa, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hi, Bob.
Hi.
You don't need me to call and defend you, but, man, these last callers are really pissing me off. I mean, you spill your guts and do a hell of a monologue.
Connie Mack
for
pisses me off, man. Why the hell is he our senator?
I beg your pardon?
Connie Mack pisses me off. Why in the hell is he our senator? George Bush pisses me off. Why in the hell is he our president?
I don't know, but...
Miserable son of a bitch who won't give 30 cents an hour to a working man.
I don't understand it. And these idiots that are calling are the unemployed assholes that are making $4 an hour, and they can't even see it. I mean, there's nothing that I'm going to be able to say right now that you haven't already said in the last hour that's going to make them understand. But it's sick. I mean, we need more guys like you. We need you nationally, man, so everybody...
No, you don't need me nationally. What you need to do is to make sure that you get rid of Connie Mack and you get rid of George Bush.
Well,
Throw him on the gutter where it belongs. 30 cents an hour, man.
It's disgusting.
Guy lives in a $3.5 million house.
And like this idiot, you can afford a house if you make $17,000 in a $50,000 house. You're right. A bank isn't going to loan anybody that the money that makes that annual wage.
And I'll be damned if I would want my family living in a house that costs $50,000 because of the type of neighborhood it would be in.
They're just a bunch of scumbag, unemployed, probably, losers that don't give a damn about themselves, and therefore they want to drag everybody down in their dirt and call up and start calling you all these names. It just makes me sick, because I want to tell you, I really appreciated that monologue. It was great, man. It really was, and we need more of that kind of thinking, and people to get off their asses.
No, what we need is a lot less of the type of nonsense going on in this world that precipitates a monologue like that.
Yeah.
That's what we need. Thank you, my friend. Off it is now to Pinellas Park. Pinellas, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hello, Bob.
Hi.
I listened to your monologue. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And I happened to hear what you were saying about the 4th of July. Do you know what it is we celebrate on the 4th of July?
Go to somebody that's not going to ask me stupid questions. Clearwater, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Good afternoon, Bob. I'll tell you, I have to be put in that same category where I'm mad at myself for getting mad at these morons that just called you before. You went through one of the most beautiful and thoughtful monologues. I mean, I almost had tears in my eyes. I thought it was absolutely something that has needed to be said. It should be said every single day almost. And then you have these idiots who absolutely lost everything that you said. And the only thing they can do is insult you, and I'll tell you, I got so angry.
Well, it's obviously the only hope they will ever have of talking on the radio, that's for sure.
Well, I guess so, but I'll tell you, it just really makes me mad, and these are the same people who are actually, you are actually fighting for these people, and they don't even understand.
I'm not fighting for anybody. I'm just telling it like it is.
I know, but basically it affects these people more than maybe someone else, and yet they don't seem to get it through their skull that that's what this country is all about, to give a chance to everyone and have a decent chance at a home or whatever it is. It just really angers me so much when I hear these morons. And like I said, that's basically all I wanted to say. I just had to call up because I was so angry. But anyway, I do appreciate your monologue. I thought it was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you very much. Don Richards standing by at the WFLA News Desk. Time. Yeah, I don't mind telling you there are days when I feel like killing for a cigarette. Today's one of those days, by the way, at least in the last 15, 20 minutes. But the whole point is the urge only lasts for a few seconds. You only feel like killing for a cigarette for a few seconds. And I'm told that I will, in all likelihood, go through the rest of my life from time to time at least wanting a cigarette and wanting one really bad. That's how bad cigarettes are. It's how addictive they are. Dr. Robert Sobel. Remember that name, please. Dr. Robert Sobel. The program is called Quit for Life. It's a program to turn you into a non-smoker. A program that will teach you how to deal. 70 WFLA.
Hi, Bob.
Hi.
I'm surprised there's so many of those bozos calling you today. Usually when you have a serious subject, they usually don't
Well, let's not talk about bozos. That's why, I didn't do a 1 hour monologue on bozos.
I know you didn't. I think the reason why that people have voted in this supposedly Republican government is because they delude themselves into thinking that they're in the same league as big business. And, of course, big business is in cahoots with the government. And they see themselves in the same bracket as big business simply because they have a little bit of money in the bank. And that's how come they voted in this Republican government that only has the big guys in their thoughts and in their heart.
Well, when I sat down and thought about my grandparents, and I thought about the one thing that they really used to be fearful of were Republicans, and they were genuinely fearful because they lived through the Depression. They lost the candy store. They lost the money in the bank. They had heard all of the crap before. They had seen these people try to turn workers against each other. They had seen these people tell lies. They had seen these people speculate away the wealth of the nation. They were terrified of them. And here it is all over again, just like it was before.
Right. Well, I think what we need in this country is something like what's happening over in China right now. The common, ordinary person needs to stand up and revolt against the tyranny that's happening around us.
Well, revolt's a strong word. I'm sure you don't mean it quite that way.
Well, I think we need to bond together and let the majority be heard.
Well, I think that you and I probably have a hell of a lot more in common than you have with George Bush or than I have with Connie Mack.
Most definitely. I mean, something has to be done where the rich people are not in charge of the government. You
know, the really funny thing is that Connie Mack's just a working schmo, too.
Oh, how do you say that?
Well, he is. That's all he is, just a working schmo. He's just like the people that you're talking about. He has been duped into thinking that he's in the same league with the big boys.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. Well,
I believe the word is useful idiot.
That's putting it mildly. I really don't know, but we have to get out and vote our conscience rather than our pocketbook the next time around.
I think we've got to do a hell of a lot more remembering a Charlie, Gene, and Mike, and our own Charlie, Genes, and Mikes.
Right.
We all have them.
I know.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Speaking of useful, what was that, useful, oh, yeah, traffic reporters. Gary McHenry, the world's most dangerous washboard, with a WFLA traffic report.
Right now, traffic along the interstate system in Tampa, not...
A guy who does have a $3.5 million house wants to cut somebody else out of a 30-cent an hour increase. That just makes no sense to me whatsoever. If that 30-cent an hour increase is supposed to be so detrimental on the bottom side, and if we're really so concerned about all these poor people, these 1,000 points of light, the kinder, gentler nation, and if we can't afford to give those people a 30-cent an hour increase in a year's time, then how about if we take all of the other people, the other 97% of the people who earn more than the minimum wage, and give them a pay cut, since that should, at least in theory, help the people getting the lower wages. Well, of course, what an utterly absurd idea, right? A pay cut. Give me a break. Well, if an increase would be inflationary, then a decrease would have to be deflationary and help those people, wouldn't you think? Well, of course not. A ridiculous idea. Palm Harbor, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Mr. Lassiter?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be one of the so-called people who are screaming and yelling, but I do want to take issue with a couple of things with you. Your monologue was done very well. I give you a lot of credit for that. The one thing I do take issue with, it's not just the 30 cents that's involved here.
Mm-hmm.
To a businessman, the average person earning $4.55 or earning $3.55, as a businessman and being a fiduciary of the government, we also have to pay taxes and their FICA and everything else. And every amount of dollar that is added to income, and I'm not against an employee earning a fair wage for a fair job.
Well, I'm going to cut you off right here and right now and ask you a couple of other questions.
Fine.
Why aren't you calling me up and crying and bitching and moaning about all of the businesses that get government-mandated fair incomes, fair returns on...
I'm a small business.
Uh-huh.
Okay, as a small business, I'm not in the league with the Trumps and the Howard Hugheses and the people like that. But from a businessman standpoint, I'm not putting myself in that category.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a businessman from the standpoint that I operate a consulting business. I've got to watch every penny, every cent I spend.
Uh-huh.
My employees, I try to treat them as well as they can. My grandparents, and I came from Philadelphia.
How many of your employees own their own homes?
All of them. I've got 4 people that work for me.
Well, then you don't have any minimum wage people, sir.
No, we have part-time people that we pay minimum wage to do stuffing.
How many of those people own their own homes?
They're young.
Well, I didn't ask you what their ages were. I asked how many of them own their own home.
Well, I said none of them own their own home because they're living with other people.
You don't give a damn either, do you?
Yes, I do give a damn.
Well, then why don't you pay them enough so they can live by themselves?
These are young people, Bob.
I don't care if they're young people.
Bob,
I don't care what their age is if they want to live by themselves.
Bob, did you come from Philadelphia like I did?
Yeah.
Okay, you talk about the Republicans and the bad people that they are and everything, and you and I
the bad
both
people
grew
have
up.
become.
You and I both grew up in Philadelphia that was run for years and years and still is by the Democratic infested party.
Yeah, the Democratic infested party that saw to it that most of the people that lived in South Philadelphia and Northeast Philadelphia own their own homes.
Most of those people lived in South Philadelphia, Bob, were Italians who worked hard, and they worked 2-3 jobs.
That's right. They own their own homes.
Well, Bob, I just take a little bit of issue. Monologue was fine.
Great.
From a businessman standpoint, there are unexpected extra costs that are involved with rate increases.
Well, what in the name of God did you bring up the corrupt Democratic politicians?
Because you bring up the corrupt stuff about the Republican Party consistently.
No, sir, I beg your pardon. I said nothing about corrupt.
Well, Bob,
you
infer that the people from the Republican Party...
No, sir, I beg your pardon. I did not infer they did anything illegal, sir.
I didn't say illegal,
well,
Bob.
That's what corrupt is.
I stand corrected on corrupt, but I will say this. There were more people who switched over from Democrats to vote Republican than were Republicans who switched over.
That's right, sir, because a lot of them are, like the previous caller said, foolishly think they're in league with the real Republicans.
They think it's savoir-faire at that time, whatever they're doing. Bob, I appreciate the call. Give me the opportunity to voice my opinion.
990-9352 in Hillsborough, 461-9352 in Pinellas, Tampa. You're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hi.
Hi.
Bob, I get a little teed off with these people also for one more thing. They have a bad habit of calling names. When they start talking to you, you are giving them a reason, and you're not calling names.
I'm not talking about the people that call me today.
I know, but calling you names
I'm not talking about the people who call me today.
Okay, well, I came in the house. I'd been outside, and Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, I came inside from mowing the lawn, and I did not hear what you were talking about. But
you called me anyway. Unbelievable. 990-9352 in Hillsborough, 461-9352 in Pinellas. And from a full board to nothing. Hey, I don't care. I don't care. It's not my life. It's your life. You people can't deal with it? Hey, win some, lose some. I mean, my God, a 1-hour monologue and there's nothing? Nothing you can deal with? Hey, what can I say? Oh, look at the Van Ortner twinkle now. It's one of those days where you have to slap the little audience on their little hands. Oh, it just makes it so much fun for all parties concerned. Tampa, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hi.
Hi.
You know, enough people get pissed off and they can actually do something about this. I'm concerned about the minimum wage legislation. It didn't take your monologue to piss me off. I've been pissed off for a long time. As soon as I heard about it, this veto. For a long time, I took things as it came. I didn't think there was anything I could do about it. But there is, and I've got an address. Bob Graham is one of the people that voted for the bill. I've got an address, and what you can do is write to his office. They can send you some information, and there's something you can actually do.
No, there are better things you can do than that. You can throw out all the turkeys that didn't vote for it. That's even much more effective than writing to Bob Graham.
Well, we're stuck for 2 years, right?
Well, it's not, it's plenty of time to start working on it.
Well, if I can give this address out, we can get this in a go-mo right now.
Sure, give out the address. Somebody's going to write it down anyway, but it'll make you feel better.
Well,
go ahead.
Who knows? 241 Dirksen Street, D-I-R-K-S-E-N Street, Senate Office Building, Washington, D.C., 2051. Write him. Let them know what you want to do about this legislation. They'll send you the information, and let's get this going.
Thank you very much. 990-9352 in Hillsborough, 461-9352 in Pinellas. Don Richards standing by at the WFLA News. It would only seem reasonable to me that, but hey, what do I know?
Hey, what do I know either? I'm making a pretty good salary, and I'm supporting 3 kids. I live in one of those $50,000 houses that you spoke of before that is not in the best neighborhood, but we're making it a very pretty house.
I really hope I'm not insulting you, but the fact of the matter is that for the most part, to get a house in that price range, you do have to go into a funky neighborhood.
Well, and not only that, you have to make about 3 or 4 times as much as the minimum wage. You can't even do it on a part of the minimum, even double the minimum wage. You can just barely qualify for a house like I'm living in.
I'm very well aware of it, my friend. Very well aware of it.
It's unbelievable to me that the whole country is not in an uproar, and the whole country is not raising as much hell about this as they do about the oil spill in Alaska, or the killing of sea turtles, or any of this other stuff we're talking about. Not that I object to any of that, but why don't they go crazy and say, hey, look, pay people what they deserve?
Well,
it's ridiculous.
I guess that's because it would cost them an extra 2 cents on their hamburger, and they just don't want to go for it.
It's a terrible situation either, isn't it? And the hamburgers aren't that good either. If they maybe make a better quality hamburger and cut their profit a little bit more, maybe we could all enjoy the speedy burgers that we have to put up with, because our kids watching on television are insane with the idea of having to go to a certain Burger King place or a McDonald's place because they get a toy when they eat their meal. And it costs a family of 5, like we've got, about $15, $16 to eat stuff that isn't even good for our kids. And then the people that are taking care of us behind the counters aren't making enough money to live.
And can't afford to eat there. Thank you, my friend.
All right.
990-9352 in Hillsborough, 990-WFLA. Madeira Beach. Hi, Madeira. You're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Bob, you neglected to mention in your monologue and stuff that back in the 40s and the 50s, people worked 60, 70 hours a week to put out a good product and worked hard to get that first home that they wanted. And
no, I beg your pardon. I believe I spoke a great deal of how much harder they worked.
Well,
and of how much prouder they were of their products.
Then I must have missed that. But the Japanese people work like that now, and they learned something from our past. And you have people talking about cutting the work week to 38 hours, to 34 hours, to a 4-day work week. And you're not going to get anywhere like that. And the minimum wage has nothing to do with it. These people have to get out there and put in their 60, 70 hours a week if they have to get that first home. You need something to get yourself started.
No, I beg your pardon. I don't believe my grandparents had to work 70 hours a week.
But there were a lot of people who did, Mr. Lassiter. I mean, you can't deny that. I'm sure if we had more time, that plenty of people who are in their 60s and 70s would tell you their husbands work 60 hours a week on the railroad. People used to make their living on the railroad. They used to work 16 hours and sleep in the cars and go to work the next morning.
Yeah, during the height of the Depression, I'm sure they did, but they didn't in the 40s and the 50s.
Well, maybe I'm misinformed, but I think the Japanese have learned something from our mistakes. And the only way we're going to get back to having good products and turning this country back around is to take pride in the country and work hard and buy American products. These people that you talk about that make all this money, it makes me sick. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a Lincoln or a Corvette for a sports car, an American car. Don't buy these foreign vehicles. And I look on the road, and it seems like every other car is a foreign vehicle, whether it be an Acura or a Toyota, and the American cars are just fine. And I'm like that other caller who called. I'm going to school, but me and my wife, and I work part-time as a mover, and my wife has an education. She does pretty well, but it's still not easy. And she was teaching, but there's just not enough money in it. She's working in a lab now and trying to work her way up in the company. But there's not enough money in teaching, and the aggravation you get isn't worth it anymore.
And that's got to change, too.
Yeah, well,
it has to change.
I hope it will, because it's scary.
Thank you much.
Bye.
Take care. 990-9352 in Hillsborough, 461-9352 in Pinellas. Standing by the WFLA news desk is not Don Richards. Not at all. As a matter of fact, it isn't anybody in the WFLA news desk at this particular time, because they're all probably lollygagging around in the newsroom. Actually, they're probably talking about organizing as we speak and going on some type of strike or possibly a company picnic. Who knows what they're talking about? I don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. But Don Richards has finally made it into the WFLA news booth, probably because he left his bologna sandwich in there and he just recently remembered it.
It was prime rib, Bob. No matter where you are in the 16-county Southwest Florida Water Management District.
Val Rico. Val, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yes, hi, Bob.
Hi.
Real quick story. This really has me interested, jumping in my car on the way home. And I'm an employer. I started my own business about 15 years ago. And I'm one of the guys that went for the brass ring and fortunately caught it and carried it. Now, when I started off 15 years ago, I had no money. I had to borrow money to go into business. Everybody thought I was crazy to give it a shot, so on and so forth. And right now, I have a very, very successful sales organization. I have a beautiful home, 2 nice cars. I have a motor yacht, which I sincerely enjoy. But there's one thing that I have that you really can't put in dollars and cents, and that is my employees. I had a tremendous amount of help and guidance along the way as I became successful. And I've never forgotten that. And I always try to pass it along to my people, because I couldn't enjoy the finer things in life if I didn't have my people there helping me and taking care of my company with me.
Dan, few employers seem to realize that.
Exactly. And you know something? I certainly am not hurting for it. My people will go through a brick wall for me, okay? They'll do anything in the world for me. I still am very successful. I am still very profitable. Now, you can't, and I'm very small. I mean, I'm not a big organization, but a successful one, okay? We do maybe $5 million a year, which in this day and age is not a great corporate giant. But why is it that these tremendous corporations who have tremendous amounts of dollars funnel it everywhere, but where it really counts to the people who make that organization go? I can't understand it. I know I'm probably very naive.
It's because we've developed into a 2-tier class system in this country. Fortunately, you seem to have understood that it's really a 1-tier system. My friend, I hate like hell to do this to you, but I'm fresh up against it.
Well, I'm glad I had the opportunity to get a hold of you.
So am I. Be good.